So let's revisit a number of points that I think are critical to understand in terms of getting teams to be excellent teams. And let me start with a story, an experience that I had working with a number of teams in class. In the undergraduate program, we do put students, about 30 or 35, into teams of 6 each, and we have 6 teams in that class. And this sophomore class is going through a whole semester with a number of classes connected and one overarching theme, a challenge, which is called the Consulting Cup. So these teams have to find an issue in a company that they're assigned to and then present a solution. And our sophomore class is 500 people, so there are almost 80, 90 teams that then, in the end of the semester, have to compete with each other. I want to tell you the story of a team that I had in class that I never thought would make it into the semifinals or even into the finals. This team ended up being an quote-unquote excellent team because it came in third. And what happened? In the very beginning, when we did the survival exercise, the team didn't do particularly well. It didn't do poorly either, but it had one person that was really dominant. And so that person was just basically carrying the conversation, and the others were just basically listening. They were kind. There were a number of girls in that class, and they were trying to accommodate the person that was speaking loudest. They did have some debates. They did exchange some perspectives, but you could sense the frustration in the team that nobody really was heard. And so they came up with a mediocre result. And as you remember, teams actually are functional and help us in surviving through collaboration. And so teams should help us to come up with a better result than we could do individually. That is the main takeaway from the survival exercise, that basically teams work well when every individual has a better chance of survival than they would have by themselves. So this is our bar for understanding when teams work. Of course, the sad truth is that oftentimes teams don't work. And I'm sure you have your share of experience with that. I know that many of my students, especially the better ones, dread teamwork. They don't want to work in teams. There's always a slacker. There's somebody that's not doing what they're assigned to do. It's always hard. There's always conflict, and one person ends up doing all the work. Unfortunately, this is the reality, not only in high school, not only in college, but even in the workspace. Unless you get a clarity on what your roles are, what the expectations are, and hold each other accountable and manage conflict well. So let me tell you, with this team, where this pretty dominant student basically carried the conversation, but then also learned, you know what, I don't know everything. And it's maybe better for me to start listening. There was a clown in that class too, a person that was trying to be funny most of the time, which helped to some degree to ease the conflict. And it also did not help in the way that people felt that they were made fun of, or that people didn't take the task seriously. In the midterm of the class, I asked all teams to present. And I kid you not, I've heard many presentations throughout my life as professor, but this was one of the worst presentations I ever saw. People were not prepared. The jokester was trying to make fun of the situation, be funny. There was no content presented. People, the students even, were saying, well, why are you doing this? Why are you presenting? You have got nothing to present. It was actually so bad that I told them afterwards, I need to speak with you. So we stood outside of class and I told them, listen, I don't know what to say, but this was the worst presentation that I've seen. This was clearly a situation for conflict. I asked them, are you that kind of a team? And then the girl stepped up and said, no, we can do better and we want to do better. All of a sudden, the dominant person was shutting up. The clown became more serious. And people started to work together because now there was no way to coat over and say everything is going to be fine and work is good. The work wasn't good. They understood it. They got their act together, you could say. They started having the meaningful conversations that they needed to have. Fortunately, this team was also smart in a way. And what they did is they employed some of the tactics, some of the mechanisms that we spoke about so far. They bonded outside of class. They did some special social event just for themselves. So they got to know each other outside of class. They also determined what was the purpose of their team being there. Was it to just be mediocre? Was it to just do the task? Was it to get a good grade? Some of the people didn't care about the grade. But then in some way they came up with a purpose that was compelling to them. They wanted to learn, do the best. They wanted to showcase that they can recover from this basic disaster in the midterm presentation. This purpose, this shared purpose, helped them to manage conflict. They found a way to work at the task at hand, and they really did an amazing job in their final presentation. It was a totally transformed team. I could not believe it. Many of the students could not believe it. The jokester, the clown, became serious. He was serious, he was presenting in a professional manner. The dominant person was still the dominant person in some way and the team lead, but in many ways he had learned how to integrate everybody else's perspective and how to communicate and listen. The girls in the team that were shy prior carried much of the knowledge, carried much of the insight, and now learned to step up and share and talk in a way that they would be listened to. So they adopted an inquiry mode. They asked questions, and that's when the dominant person and the clown in some way got to listen. I think this showed to me that understanding some of the basic principles can help you go from a really bad team, being a bad, poorly performing team, to being one of the best teams in the entire cohort. So what I want to mention here is that conflict and failure can be a great thing. Knowing how to deal with it, how to recover from it, knowing how to think about it can be even better. It can help you, it can give you the tools to prevent such conflict from happening in the beginning or having to happen, and then you can build a team from the get-go to be excellent. The important thing, again, that I hope will come out and help you in conceptualizing how you can build teams best is, again, the 4-drive theory. In order to achieve what you want to do, the drive to acquire, it is important that you set yourself goals and that you can measure them and that you can hold yourself accountable. So that means the drive to acquire. It is important that you bond well, that you build trust. And oftentimes this happens outside of the context of work. Work is oftentimes geared towards achievement of the drive to acquire, the goals that you set yourself. But teams that bond well have a much easier way to achieve those goals. So getting to know each other outside of work, maybe having a happy hour or maybe having some kind of other event, does help. And with the intention to do that, often many organizations and many teams do have planned social events like that. The drive to comprehend points to the importance of having this higher shared purpose. If a team does not have it, it's very easy to fall apart, especially during time of conflict. There is no need to work together when all you get is acrimony and bad sensations. So having a higher purpose of what you want to achieve, and not only one person having that, but having and creating a shared higher purpose for you, is critical in overcoming conflict. The drive to defend, as we talked about, is also very critical in that psychological safety is the key enabler of all of the prior things, of teams to work well together. If I don't feel safe, if you don't feel safe to share what we can contribute to the team, then the team will not perform better than the sum of its individuals. It most likely will perform worse. I hope that all of this makes sense to you and that this is something useful to think about. And I would encourage you to look at the situations that you have been in teams across the spectrum of where you engage, whether it's the clubs, whether it's the classes, whether it's at work, in what way you can adopt some of these mechanisms, these protocols, these ideas, and see whether and how you can shift and make a team go from good, mediocre, or failing to excellent.